In the early winter of 1912, life in the village of Samroui followed its usual rhythm. People tended their fields, shut their doors before nightfall, and tried to ignore the uneasy feeling that came with the shortening days. Then, without warning, livestock began turning up dead. Strange imprints showed up in the snow, prints no one could quite explain. The men who patrolled the hills stopped talking as much, their silence louder than any warning. And the night a single howl echoed from the ridge, cutting through the cold air like a blade. The villagers realized something new had entered their valley. Whatever it was, they were not ready for it. I arrived in Samroui during the fall of that same year, when the morning frost clung to the fields long after sunrise. The train dropped me off in a larger town miles away, and from there I made the rest of the trip in a small wooden cart pulled by a tired horse. Forests, open farmland, and bare vineyards passed by like fading scenery in a dream. I had taken the job as schoolmaster, hoping for steady work and a quiet place to live. The inspector's letter mentioned only the village's isolation and the severity of its winters. The man driving the cart, Henri, kept his shoulders hunched against the cold and smoked as he guided the horse. He didn't speak for a long while. Only when we left the main road and rolled onto a narrow dirt path beneath tall pines did he finally break the silence. "You know why the last schoolmaster left, monsieur?" he asked. "I heard he married and moved to Limoges," I said. Henri let out a low sound that wasn't quite a laugh. "That's the story they put on paper," he said. "Makes it easier for everyone." The cart jolted over the uneven ground. On both sides, the pines crowded close. Not a single bird called. "And the real story?" I asked. "He found one of his students in a ditch by the forest. Her throat had been ripped open. They blamed a wolf. Men from 3 villages searched the hills afterward, but they didn't find a thing. He lasted a few weeks after that, then left before dawn one morning and never returned." His voice stayed calm, but his hands shook slightly on the reins. The inspector hadn't mentioned anything about a dead child. "There are wolves everywhere in these regions," I said, trying to sound logical. "There are," he replied. "But the old folks in Samroui talk about more than wolves. If a cow dies in the night or a child falls sick, they give it the same name." We passed an old stone cross set at the edge of a field. Someone had left a bundle of dried herbs at its base. "What name?" I asked. He kept his eyes on the road ahead. "He say the wolf walks upright," he murmured. "He say it wears a man's skin by day." Coming from a town lit by gas lamps, a place with libraries, cafes, and people who believed in science, I told myself Henri was just repeating the kind of superstitions rural villages cling to when misfortune hits. Still, under the heavy shadows of the pines, his words settled over me in a way I couldn't quite shake. When the forest opened, the valley appeared. A shallow bowl of fields separated by hedges and stone walls. At its center was Samroui, a cluster of stone houses, a crooked little street, a small square, and a church with a leaning bell tower. Thin smoke curled from a handful of chimneys. Henri stopped in front of the village inn. A woman stepped out, wiping her hands on her apron. Her hair was going gray and tied back in a simple knot. Her arms looked strong, as if she'd carried more than her share of work through the years. "Jean, this is Monsieur Delhomme, the new schoolmaster. He has arrived in an unlucky year." "Enough of that," she scolded, though her eyes lingered on me, studying me. "Your room's ready. We heard you'd come before All Saints' Day." The village carried the sense of damp soil, smoke, and livestock. A few children peered from doorways, but scattered the moment Jean glanced their way. Inside, the inn's main room was dim, the ceiling beams darkened by decades of smoke. A pot hung over glowing coals in the fireplace. Two men sat at a table near the hearth, a jug of wine between them. They went silent the moment I entered. "This is the new master," Jean said. The taller man, lean, sharp-nosed, with a scar on his chin, stood to shake my hand. "Marcel, I hunt in the hills. Children here can be stubborn. If there's work to do, they vanish straight into the fields." "I'll try to make school worth the trouble," I replied. The other man, Etienne, broad-shouldered with pale eyes, looked me over slowly. "You picked a bad year," he said. "The harvest failed. Then the beast came back. Folks think God stopped listening." Jean put a bowl of stew and bread in front of me and cut him off with a sharp look. "Let him eat." "I'm not easily frightened," I said, though my voice lacked the firmness I intended. A little while later, the mayor arrived, Monsieur Gault, a stout man with a tidy mustache and a red-tinted nose. He took my hand in both of his and spoke in a rehearsed, official tone. "Samroe is honored, monsieur. The Republic still remembers even the smallest villages." "I am pleased to serve," I answered. He sat and poured himself wine. "You came by the Pin Road. Then you know how close the forest presses. At night it's worse. But we're not children. There have been..."
He told me you only stay loyal to whoever can bring you meat in winter or leave you with nothing but potatoes. He said it without bitterness, just as a plain truth. We walked down the road toward the square together. A bell struck once, twice, then fell silent. The clouds overhead had thickened, turning the forest on the distant slope almost black. A few villagers moved quickly from place to place, avoiding each other's eyes. Near the church entrance, Etienne stood with his cap crushed between his fingers, talking to an older woman wrapped tightly in a heavy shawl. Her back curved with age, but her gaze was sharp enough to slice through stone. She stopped speaking as soon as she saw me. "This is Madame Fournier," Marcel murmured. "She remembers every hard year for the last 60. When she speaks, people listen." Madame Fournier looked me over with a calm, measuring stare. "So, you are the new schoolmaster. You believe letters and numbers can chase away what walks out there." "I believe fear grows where people don't understand," I answered. "If the children learn to think, maybe they won't imagine monsters in every shadow." "Not in every shadow," she said. "Only in the ones that hold them." Her voice didn't rise or fall. "Be careful. Do not teach them to doubt something that can kill them." She walked into the church without another word. Inside, the air smelled of melted wax and damped stone. Thin beams of light filtered through small windows placed high in the walls. Faded saints watched from cracked paint. At the altar stood Guo, along with Father Laurent, and two older men I hadn't met yet. Their low conversation stopped as we approached. "We're deciding how we speak of what has happened, especially before the feast. Fear helps no one, you understand." Father Laurent was gaunt, his cheeks hollow, his eyes too serious for comfort. His cassock hung loosely on him as if he were shrinking inside it. "People come to me with their fears," he said. "They whisper about curses, about bargains made with things in the dark. I tell them God does not abandon his own, but each new death makes it harder to reassure them." "How many deaths?" I asked. A pause settled over the group before one of the elders answered. "Simon, a cooper. A man in the summer, found in the marsh, chest torn open. Then the girl on the roadside, as you've heard. And animals, too many to count." "Wolves attack livestock, that's nothing new." "These wounds aren't from wolves," Marcel said quietly. "I've hunted wolves all my life. Their teeth make different marks." Wu lifted his hands as if smoothing ruffled air, though his thumb kept rubbing a small circle into his palm. "The prefect says wolves," he said, "so we say wolves. And that is the end of it. If anyone speaks of anything else, we call it superstition. Do you agree?" I knew what he was asking. If the schoolmaster dismissed all talk of monsters, others would follow. "I'll teach what the manuals teach. I won't repeat stories meant to frighten children." "That will do," he said. "We ask only that you don't validate old legends." Father Laurent looked toward the doorway, where a pale slice of sky was visible. "Legends begin somewhere," he murmured. "But this is not the moment to debate that." When we stepped outside again, the square had filled with villagers bringing offerings for the coming feast. Baskets of potatoes, jars of preserves, sacks of grain. Women gathered in small clusters, whispering. Men checked wheelchairs and tightened harnesses. Everyone kept one eye on the church and the other on the tree line. As our feet touched the worn stones, a shout came from the far side of the village. A boy around 12 sprinted toward us, hair flying, chest heaving. I would later know his name was Luke, but at that moment, he was only a terrified child. "They got another one," he panted. "In the ragman's field by the stream. It's torn apart." Silence spread around us. Someone dropped a sack, grain scattered across the stones. "What did you see?" Marcel asked, hands gripping the boy's shoulders. "Blood in the snow," Luke said. "The sheep are dead, not eaten, just left there. My father told me to find you." Guo's face drained of color. He turned to the priest. "Go back inside, ring the bell, bring everyone in. Tell them to pray." He hesitated, then looked at me. "You may come with us if you want, or stay here, where it is safe." I hesitated. The dim church tempted me. I could pretend all of this was village gossip gone too far, but another part of me, smaller but stubborn, needed to see the truth for myself. If I stayed behind, I would always wonder. "I'll go," I said. Luke led us along a narrow path past houses, gardens, and sheds toward the lower fields. Others followed at a distance, whispering among themselves. The path sloped toward a stream thinly coated with ice. The ragman's field stretched beyond it, a shabby patch of land surrounded by a broken fence. We smelled the scene before we reached it. A heavy metallic tang of blood mixed with wet wool and something else, something unfamiliar. Marcel slowed. Etienne crossed himself quickly. When I stepped into the field, my stomach twisted. 4 sheep lay scattered near the fence, their bellies torn open, ribs stark against the cold. Their legs twisted at unnatural angles. Snow around them had turned dark. "They didn't eat," Marcel said. "This wasn't hunger." He knelt beside one of the bodies, examining the wounds with steady hands. I stayed back, taking shallow breaths. I'd seen slaughtered livestock before, but always in tidy barns, under controlled hands. This was chaos. Bodies flung as though a storm of claws had swept through them. "Tracks," Etienne said hoarsely. Near the far corner, where the fence sagged, the snow was churned. Prints came from the forest, crossed the ditch, and entered the enclosure. At first, I thought they were just large wolf prints, but when I crouched closer, I saw that some of them had no resemblance to paws at all. They were long, with a narrow back and a wider front, like something pressing forward on spread toes. Deep claw marks cut into the snow ahead of them. Between them were impressions that looked disturbingly like a human foot, but stretched, with the ends splitting into pointed shapes. "Wolves don't step like this," Marcel said. His voice was calm, but the tension around his mouth betrayed him. Guo turned away sharply. "This is what fear does," he snapped. "We stand in a bloody field and imagine nightmares. We say wolves. We will tell the prefect wolves. Anything else invites mockery. Do you agree?" He fixed his eyes on me. Behind him, Luke watched me as if the fate of the village hung on my words. Etienne's jaw tightened. Jane stood at the fence, silent, waiting. The choice became clear. If I echoed Guo, I would stand with those clinging to order. If I sided with the hunters and the old woman with the sharp eyes, I would lend weight to the terror growing in the valley. "I've never seen tracks like these," I said at last, "but fear can fool the eye. Calling it a wolf doesn't change what killed these sheep." No one wanted that answer. For a moment, not a soul spoke. The only sound was the faint rush of the stream and the distant ringing of the church bell. Marcel rose and brushed his hands on the snow. Whatever it is came from the forest, and it will come again. We need more than prayers." He looked at Guo. "We hunt tonight, with or without the council." We walked back toward the village with the cold pushing through our coats. The bell kept ringing, calling villagers inside. Its steady toll should have been comforting. Instead, it made the unease in my stomach tighten. Marcel kept his eyes fixed on the tree line, as if expecting something to move. Etienne stayed close. Luc hovered near me, still breathing hard, afraid, maybe, that distance itself might invite danger. When we reached the first cluster of houses, people rushed out searching for our faces for answers. Guo pushed through them and raised.
I finished arranging the classroom, writing Monday's lesson on the board and setting the children's copybooks into neat stacks. When everything was ready, I stayed by the window a little longer. Snow drifted down in uneven bursts, melting as soon as it touched the ground. I thought again about the tracks in the field. I kept trying to push them out of my mind, but every time I blinked, their shape came back. I searched for some logical explanation. A big dog, a wounded animal with an odd gait, snow melting in strange patterns. Every idea fell apart when I remembered how large the prints were and how evenly spaced. At dusk, Jean called me down for dinner. The inn's common room glowed with 2 oil lamps and the fire in the hearth. A pot of stew simmered slowly. 3 hunters I hadn't met before sat quietly with bowls in front of them, their boots covered in mud from the hills. Each one had a rifle leaned against his chair. Marcel came in last, bringing a sharp gust of cold air. "We set traps by the lower ridge," he said. "If anything crosses tonight, we'll hear it." "Are these men all you have?" I asked. 4 others are watching the upper road," he said. "Most of the rest are too old and some refuse to go out after dark." He pulled up a chair and filled his bowl. "You could stay here," he said. "No one will think less of you." I imagined lying in my narrow bed upstairs, listening to those howls growing closer. The thought turned my stomach. "I'll come," I told him. Marcel studied me. "You won't need a rifle. Stay behind us. If we tell you to run, you run." I agreed. After dinner, the men began preparing to leave. Each checked his weapon, his pack, and his lantern. Jean handed them small cloth bundles filled with bread and dried meat. "For strength," she said, "don't waste it." Even in their grim mood, they understood she cared for every life in the village. Outside, the night had settled completely. A thin layer of frost crackled under our boots. The moon hadn't risen yet, leaving the valley in darkness broken only by our lanterns. We passed the last houses and headed toward the lower fields. The silence was almost complete, broken only by our breathing and the soft clink of metal. At the edge of the field, Marcel raised his lantern and studied the snow. "No new tracks," he murmured. "Good." He pointed to a flat rock where I could sit if I got tired. "Stay behind this line of stones," he said. "We'll circle the perimeter. If anything moves, keep low and don't call out." The men spread out, their lanterns forming a loose arc. The stream nearby murmured faintly. For a long while, nothing happened. My thoughts looped nervously. I counted my breaths. I listened to the crunch of boots as the hunters patrolled. The cold pressed into my hands until the skin stiffened. I kept shifting to get the blood moving. A distant howl broke the quiet. It drifted out of the forest, faint but unmistakable. It rose quickly, held, then dropped in a broken pattern that made the hair on my neck lift. Marcel stopped walking. The light of his lantern swung slowly. "Same voice as last night," he said. "It's calling something." Another howl answered farther down the valley.
This one was shorter, sharper, nothing like any wolf sound I'd heard. The men tensed. Julain, one of the younger hunters, edged closer to Marcel. "Should we fire a warning?" he whispered. "No," Marcel said. "If we scare it off now, it'll come back where we can't see it." The howls faded. The stillness afterward felt heavier than the noise. More time passed, and I began to think the night would end with only fear and no answers, but something in the silence told me that wasn't true. I must have lost track of the hour. The lanterns had dimmed. Frost thickened on the grass. I shifted again to keep warm. Then a soft crack sounded near the stream. Every head turned. Marcel raised his lantern. Its glow reached only a short distance, leaving the tree line in shadow. "Something's down there," he said quietly. Etienne crouched beside him with his rifle ready. Another crack followed, closer this time. A branch pushed aside, a footstep heavier than any fox or wolf. Without speaking, Marcel moved toward the stream, the other men forming a slow semicircle. He lifted his lantern high. Its glow slid over the reeds, the thin crust of ice, and the pale tree trunks. Nothing moved. "Do you smell that?" Julain whispered. At first, I smelled nothing. Then it hit me. The thick, sharp scent of wet fur, blood, and something older I couldn't place. It coated the back of my throat. The rustling came again. "Hold," Marcel said.
Inside, the hunters gathered near the hearth. No one reached for food or drink. Their silence carried more weight than shouting ever could. Julien stared at the floor. "It looked at me," he said softly. "It knew I was the one who moved first." "You're still alive," Jean said. "That is what matters." I sat with my back against the wall, hands still trembling. My mind replayed the creature's steady steps, the way its gaze lingered on each of us, how it mirrored our movements as though studying us. "It let us go," I murmured. Marcel shook his head. "It didn't let us go," he said. "It was learning us. There's a difference." None of us slept. Each time the wind brushed the eaves, someone lifted his head. Luke sat bundled in blankets near the fire, refusing to close his eyes. Jean moved quietly among us, tending the flames, warming water, checking shutters. Just before dawn, the church bell rang again. 3 short strikes. Gu had arranged a signal with the hunters. 3 meant trouble. Marcel rose instantly. "We go." He looked at me. "You don't have to come this time." But I stepped forward. "I'll come," I said. The square was crowded by the time we arrived. Some villagers held lanterns, others stood in their nightclothes, faces pale with fear. Father Laurent waited on the church steps, holding a candle. Gu met us with a sickly expression. "It took a man," he said. "Old Bertrand, behind his barn." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. "Show us," Marcel said. Gu led us down a narrow lane toward the village edge. Frost clung to the roofs. The barn door hung open. The ground was disturbed, villagers kneeling nearby, whispering prayers. When they moved aside, the sight froze my breath. Old Bertrand lay on his back, eyes wide. His chest had been ripped open in one brutal swipe. Blood had hardened into dark streaks across his coat. His hands still clutched a cracked lantern, shattered as though something had struck it. Tracks surrounded him, the same prints from the fields, but now they led deeper into the village before turning back toward the forest. Marcel crouched beside the body. "It's hunting closer," he said. "It's learning how we move." Gu trembled. "What do we tell the people?" he whispered. Marcel stood, expression grim. "The truth. Anything else will kill us faster." He stared toward the trees. "We hunt again tonight, but next time it won't watch. It will come for us." The villagers pressed closer, drawn by the body, by the prayers, by the awful stillness. No one spoke above a murmur. Even the children sensed something had changed. Their old boundaries meant nothing now. Their fields, fences, and night watches were no longer enough. Marcel took a blanket from a nearby cart and covered Bertrand's body from the neck down. He placed a hand on the old man's shoulder for a moment, bowed his head, then straightened. "We cannot leave him here. Take him to the church." Villagers stepped forward immediately. 2 men lifted the body carefully and carried him away. People parted. Some crossed themselves, others whispered his name. A woman I didn't know sobbed into her shawl. "Who found him?" I asked. "His son-in-law," Gu said. "He heard something in the barn. When he reached the door, it was already over." "Did he see anything?" "Only movement," Gu said. "A shape. It slipped away before he could shout." I stared at the barn door. Scratch marks scored the wood. Long, deep, angled, nothing like tool marks or animal clawing. My skin tightened. "Tracks go past the well," Etienne said, pointing to the lane. Marcel knelt, tracing a print in the frost. "It wasn't running," he said. "Too steady. It walked through the village as if it knew we couldn't stop it." Jean approached in her heavy winter coat. Her eyes moved from the covered body to the hunters' faces. "It won't end here," she said. "It's taken animals, it's taken a child.
Now a man at his own door. You can't expect it to give us another night." "We expect nothing from it," Marcel replied, "but we'll be ready." "How?" she asked. "We hunt before sundown," he said, "not just a handful." A wave of disbelief swept the crowd. "You can't ask the whole village to go into the forest. They're farmers, craftsmen, not soldiers." "Then we stay here and watch it take us one by one. You saw the prince. It walked the whole length of the lane. It could have tried doors. It could have taken anyone." His words hit the crowd like cold wind. A tall, gaunt man stepped forward, wearing an old mended hunting coat. "I'll go," he said. "If we hide while others fight, we're no better than prey." Another man joined him, then another. Soon heads nodded across the square. Fear remained etched in their faces, but resolve began to rise beneath it. Gu looked overwhelmed. He hadn't intended to lead a hunting party into the forest. He turned to Father Laurent. The priest stepped forward. "If you do this, your purpose must stay clear. Do not go seeking vengeance. Do not let fear lead you. Learn what this thing is. Do what must be done, but do not lose yourselves." His voice held steady, though dread darkened his eyes. Marcel nodded. "We won't lose ourselves, but we will not stand idle." As the crowd drifted away, I remained near the barn. The tracks in the frost disturbed me more than the sight of the body. They weren't signs of violence alone. They were signs of familiarity. The creature had walked among us without worry, without hurry. That realization settled in me like a stone. Julien approached. "It moved like it already knew the village," he said. "It did," I replied. "You think it's been watching longer than we realized?" he asked. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The hunters planned to meet again at dusk. Until then, I tried working in the schoolhouse, but concentration slipped away. Every noise outside made me start. I tried writing out Monday's lesson, but my thoughts wandered, and my handwriting grew uneven. I stopped before the chalk snapped in my fingers. In late afternoon, I walked through the village to steady my nerves. The air was sharp and cold. Smoke curled from chimneys. People spoke softly as they gathered wood or hauled water. Mothers pulled their children indoors when they saw me. Even the animals were on edge, dogs barking without reason, the few horses stamping restlessly, as though catching a scent I couldn't. When I passed the Gu house, the mayor stepped outside, tightening his coat. His face looked drawn. "You're preparing a hunt," he said. "I can see it. Whatever I said before, I won't stop you." I said, "You saw the tracks. You saw what happened to Bertrand." He exhaled sharply. "Reasonable men don't chase monsters, but maybe reason has run its course." I asked, "Will you join us?" He stared toward the dark line of trees. He said, "I'm no hunter, but I won't hide. If the village goes, I go." His answer surprised me. Despite all his denial, he still had pride or guilt enough to stand with us. We walked back to the square together. By sundown, 20 men had gathered at the inn. They carried rifles, axes, pitchforks, and lanterns. Their breath fogged the cold air. Jean stepped outside with baskets of bread and cheese. She said, "Eat now. You'll need the strength." No one argued. Marcel addressed the group. "We follow the tracks into the forest. We stay together. No one breaks rank. No one fires unless the shot is clear. If it circles us, we tighten. If it runs, we don't pursue blindly." Someone asked, "Do you think it'll wait for us?" Marcel said, "No, but it will watch. It always watches." I stood among them, heart pounding. I didn't belong there. I knew it. But stepping back now would leave a shame I'd carry for the rest of my life. When we set out, the lanterns formed a wavering chain along the path. Snow crunched beneath our boots. The forest darkened around us with every step, swallowing our light piece by piece. By the first ridge, the moon had risen,
casting pale light over the treetops. The cold deepened. The air smelled of pine, wet earth, and something faintly metallic. Etienne lifted a hand. "Tracks," he said. Marcel crouched and studied them. "Fresh," he said, "deep, heading into the darkest part of the woods." Julien swallowed. "It wants us to follow." Marcel rose. "We follow anyway." We pressed deeper. Branches closed overhead. Lantern light flickered across trunks and tangled roots. The silence thickened around us. Every movement felt amplified, every breath, every step.
The hunters crowded around the hearth, but no one reached for food or drink. The silence in that room was heavier than any shouting could have been. Julien kept his eyes on the floor. "It looked at me," he whispered. "It knew I was the one who moved first." "You're alive," Jean told him. "That's what matters." I sat with my back against the wall, hands still trembling. My mind kept replaying the creature's slow, deliberate steps, the way it watched us, the way it mirrored us without any effort at all. "It let us go," I said. Marcel shook his head. "It didn't let us go. It was learning us. There's a difference." None of us slept that night. Every time the wind brushed the roof, someone lifted his head. Luc wrapped himself in blankets by the hearth, refusing to close his eyes. Jean stayed awake too, moving quietly from man to man, adjusting the fire, heating water, checking the shutters. Just before dawn, the church bell rang. 3 short strikes. It was the signal Gu had agreed on with the hunters. 3 meant trouble. Marcel stood immediately. "We go," he said. Then he looked at me. "You don't have to come this time." But I stepped forward anyway. "I'm coming." By the time we reached the square, people were already gathering. Some held lanterns, others stood outside in their night clothes. Father Laurent waited at the church steps holding a candle. Gu rushed to us, pale and shaking. "It took a man," he said. "Old Bertrand, behind his barn." A wave of whispers rippled through the crowd. "Show us," Marcel said. Gu led us toward the edge of the village. Frost shimmered across the rooftops. The barn door stood open, the earth torn up in front of it. Several villagers knelt nearby, whispering prayers. They parted at our approach. Bertrand lay on his back, his eyes open to the cold morning sky. His chest had been ripped open in one brutal strike. Frozen blood crusted across his coat. His hand still clenched a lantern with cracked glass, as if something had knocked it from him in an instant. Tracks surrounded him. The same prints we'd seen in the fields, but this time they led deeper into the village before turning back towards the forest. Marcel crouched beside the body. "It's hunting closer now," he said. "It's watching how we move." Gu's voice shook. "What do we tell the people?" "The truth," Marcel said. "A lie will get us killed faster." He stared towards the forest. "We hunt again tonight, but next time it won't just watch, it'll come for us." More villagers gathered around Bertrand's body, drawn by the sound of quiet prayer and the grim focus of the hunters. No one spoke above a whisper. Even the children felt the weight of what lay there in the frost. I studied the faces around me, fear, anger, disbelief, but most of all, resignation. They already understood that the fences, the night watch, all the boundaries they trusted no longer kept them safe. Marcel pulled a blanket from a cart and laid it over Bertrand's body, resting his hand briefly on the old man's shoulder before stepping back. "We can't leave him here. Take him to the church." 2 villagers lifted the body and carried him toward the square. People stepped aside, some crossing themselves, others murmuring his name. A woman I didn't recognize sobbed into her shawl. I asked Gu, "Who found him?" "His son-in-law," he said. "He heard something in the barn. By the time he reached the door, it was already done." "Did he see it?" "He saw movement, a shape. It slipped away before he could shout." I looked at the barn door. Deep scratches marked the wood, long, angled, powerful. Not the kind left by tools or livestock. Etienne pointed toward a narrow lane. "Tracks go past the well." Marcel kneeled to examine them. He touched one print, studying the depth. "He wasn't running," he said. "These steps are too steady. It walked through the village knowing no one could stop it." Jeanne arrived wrapped in her thick winter coat. Her eyes moved from the covered body to the hunters' faces. "It won't stop there," she said. "It's taken animals, then a child, now a man on his own doorstep. You can't expect it to give us another night." "We're not expecting anything," Marcel said, "but we'll be ready." "How?" she asked. He said, "We hunt before sundown, all of us." Gasps spread through the crowd. "You can't send the whole village into the woods," Gu said. "They're farmers, craftsmen, not soldiers." "Then we stay here," Marcel said, "and let it take us one by one. You saw the prints. It walked the full length of the lane. It could have tried doors. It could have taken whoever it wanted." His words hit the crowd like ice water. A tall, thin man stepped forward in a patched hunting coat. "I'll go," he said. "If we let others fight while we hide, then we're nothing but prey." Another man stepped up, then another. Soon more nodded. Fear was still in their eyes, but something else was rising beneath it. Resolution. Gu looked overwhelmed. He glanced toward the priest as if hoping for guidance. Father Laurent stepped forward. "If you go," he said, "you must keep your purpose clear. Don't go seeking vengeance. Don't let fear decide your actions. Find the truth of this thing. Do what must be done, but do not lose yourselves." His voice didn't shake, though his eyes were heavy with dread. "We won't lose ourselves," Marcel said, "but we won't stand idle." As the crowd drifted away, I lingered near the barn. The tracks disturbed me more than the sight of the body had. They weren't just signs of violence, they were signs of familiarity, of something that walked among us as though it belonged. Julien joined me. It moved like it knew everything, every road, every door. "It did," I said. "Do you think it's been watching us longer than we thought?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The hunters planned to meet at the inn before dusk. Until then, I tried working at the schoolhouse, but every sound sent my eyes to the window. I tried writing notes for Monday's lesson, but the words were uneven. Eventually, I stopped before the chalk snapped in my hand. By late afternoon, I walked through the village to clear my head. The air was sharp and icy. Smoke from chimneys hung low. People spoke only in hushed tones. Mothers pulled their children indoors at the sight of me. Even the animals were uneasy. Dogs barked at nothing. Horses stomped nervously, as if catching a scent I couldn't see. When I passed Gu's home, he stepped outside, tightening his coat. "You're preparing a hunt," he said. "I see it in your face. Whatever I said before, I can't stop you now." I told him, "You saw the tracks. You saw what it did to Bertrand." He sighed. "Reasonable men don't chase monsters, but maybe the time for reason is done. Will you join us?" He stared towards the forest. "I'm no hunter," he said, "but I won't hide. If the village goes, I go." That surprised me. For all his denial, he still had enough pride, or guilt, to stand with the others. We walked back to the square in silence. By sundown,
20 men gathered at the end with rifles, axes, pitchforks, and lanterns, their breath fogged in the cold air. Jean brought out baskets of bread and cheese. "Eat now," she said. "You'll need it." No one argued. Marcel addressed them. "We follow the tracks," he said. "We stay together. No one fires unless they have a clear shot. If it circles us, we tighten up. If it runs, we don't chase blindly." "Will it wait for us?" someone asked. "No," Marcel said. "It will watch. It always watches." My heart hammered in my chest. I didn't belong there. I knew it. But stepping back felt impossible. Shame would follow me longer than any fear. We set out. Lanterns formed a wavering line along the path. Snow crunched under our boots. The forest swallowed our light, little by little. By the time we reached the ridge, the moon had climbed high, lighting the treetops with a pale glow. The cold deepened. The air smelled of pine, damp soil, and something metallic. Etienne raised a hand. "Tracks." Marcel kneeled. "Fresh," he said, heading into the darkest part. "It wants us to follow," Julien whispered. "We follow anyway," Marcel said. Branches closed in overhead as we moved deeper. Lantern light flickered over roots and trunks. The silence pressed on our ears.
The hunters backed away from the sled, each man keeping his eyes on the creature as if waiting for it to rise a second time. It didn't move. When Marcel was steady enough to stand with my arm around him, he nodded toward the body. "We're taking it back to the village," he said. "People need to see it. No one should be able to say we imagined all of this." Etienne hesitated. "If they see it, some of them might panic." "And if they don't," Marcel answered, "then we'll spend the rest of the winter chasing shadows. The village needs to know exactly what hunted them." No one argued with that. We cut rope from our packs and tied its arms and legs together. Even bound tightly, the creature felt heavier than it looked, as though its weight came from something deeper than muscle or bone. We hauled it onto a supply sled one of the men had dragged along. I avoided touching its fur. The stillness of its body felt unnatural, too final, too dense. The trip back took longer than the journey out. Lantern light stretched across the snow in dim patches. The wounded leaned heavily on whoever supported them. Marcel walked with slow, careful steps, his head low, but his feet never faltering. The sled dragged behind us, the creature's body thudding softly whenever the terrain rose or dipped. No one let it out of their sight for more than a moment. When the first rooftops appeared between the trees, a shout went up from the men in front. Lights flickered behind shutters. The bell tower cut a dark shape against the sky. As we entered the square, doors opened and villagers stepped out to greet us. Their relief lasted only a heartbeat. Then they saw what we were pulling behind us. Gasps echoed through the square. Mothers pulled their children behind them. A few men stepped forward, pale and stunned. Jean pushed past the crowd and stopped cold when her eyes landed on the creature. Her hands curled into fists. There was no fear on her face, only a grim, tired recognition. "So it was real," she said quietly. "It's dead," Etienne replied. Father Laurent hurried over from the church with a lantern raised high. He approached the sled with a mixture of dread and duty. "Cover it," he said. "The children shouldn't see this." Some villagers were already crying softly into their scarves. Others stood completely still, unable or unwilling to accept what lay before them. A few men clenched their jaws, anger simmering. Anger not at the carcass, but at the terror that had ruled their nights for so long. Guo raised his hands. "We'll decide together what comes next, but first, let the hunters rest. They bled for all of us." The crowd parted.
The wounded were carried into the inn. Jean took charge immediately, calling out orders as she moved from one injured man to the next. Julien supported the hunter whose arm was broken. I guided Marcel into a chair near the hearth. He let out a long breath and closed his eyes, steadying himself. Outside, the villagers remained gathered around the sled. A heavy cloth covered the creature now, but its shape was unmistakable. After a while, the council called everyone to the church. People filled the pews quickly. Cold air drifted through the room, carrying exhausted murmurs. No one had slept. No one expected to sleep soon. Father Laurent stood in front of the congregation. "Whatever it was," he said, "it's finished. Tonight, no one was taken. Tonight, the hunters came home." He paused, letting the words settle in the crowd. "But we cannot let fear become our ruler. We lean on each other. We stay a village. We bury the dead, tend to the wounded, and keep our eyes forward." Guo raised his hands. "We'll decide together what comes next, but first let the hunters rest. They bled for all of us." The crowd parted. The wounded were carried into the inn. Jean took charge immediately, calling out orders as she moved from one injured man to the next. Julien supported the hunter whose arm was broken. I guided Marcel into a chair near the hearth. He let out a long breath and closed his eyes, steadying himself. Outside, the villagers remained gathered around the sled. A heavy cloth covered the creature now, but its shape was unmistakable. After a while, the council called everyone to the church. People filled the pews quickly. Cold air drifted through the room, carrying exhausted murmurs. No one had slept. No one expected to sleep soon. Father Laurent stood in front of the congregation. "Whatever it was," he said, "it's finished. Tonight, no one was taken. Tonight, the hunters came home." He paused, letting the words settle in the crowd. "But we cannot let fear become our ruler. We lean on each other. We stay a village. We bury the dead, tend to the wounded, and keep our eyes forward." Guo stepped beside him. "We'll send word to the prefect. Not about wolves, not about fables. We'll tell him something dangerous lived in our valley, something we put an end to. We'll speak plainly." He drew in a slow breath. "And then we rebuild." The meeting ended without argument. People drifted out in small groups, speaking softly, drained but relieved. By sunrise, pale light stretched across the rooftops of Saint-Brouy. The creature's remains had been moved to the church's storage shed and locked away. The hunters were scattered around the inn, sleeping on benches, chairs, even the floor. Jean stayed awake through the night, boiling water, washing blood from coats, tending wounds. I sat by the window in the inn's common room, watching frost melt on the glass. Smoke curled from chimneys. The village looked ordinary again, though the calm felt fragile. Marcel stirred in his chair across from me. "It's over," he said. "Do you really believe that?" I asked. He waited a long moment before answering. "Yes. Whatever stalked these woods is gone. The valley is quiet again. The forest will go back to being just a forest." His voice carried a tired certainty. I looked out at the snow-covered fields, the rooftops touched with early light, the ridgeline of trees in the distance. For the first time since arriving here, the village felt open again, no longer shrinking beneath its own fear. "Classes start tomorrow," I said. Marcel nodded. "Life starts again." And it did. The people of Saint-Brouy returned to their routines. The hunters healed. The villagers buried Bertrand with solemn care. Fresh snowfall erased the tracks in the fields. The forest stayed still through the rest of the winter. I taught my lessons. The children filled the classroom with their soft laughter. Sometimes I caught myself gazing toward the tree line, remembering the creature's eyes and the crushing cold of that night. But the days passed, and nothing moved out there except the wind and the birds. Spring came. Snow melted. New shoots dotted the fields. The village moved forward. In time, the events of that winter settled into a story, the kind old villagers told by their firesides. A real story, from a real night, when fear stepped out of the forest and the people of San Bruy faced it together.